The John LeBank Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, Earthlings, and alert the media. The John LeBank Show on the air. Welcome, my friends, after the holiday season has now commenced. The Black Friday madness is taking over malls across the nation. Even in Europe, people are going crazy to get that special little something. I myself had a relatively mild, to say the least, beginning to my holiday. Had the family over. We had dinner. It's a little more in the family, but there were people over the house, and we were enjoying our Thanksgiving together. It wasn't too bad. We had a lot of food. It was a lot of good stuff. I tried a new recipe. I don't think I did it just right. The turkey, the turkey was a little dry. I mean, it probably had something to do with the people being, an hour and a half late. It was nice, they all came at the same time. They all came at the same time, so it was a group thing. But they showed up a little late, and the turkey had an additional amount of time to cook. I should have probably took it out, but I wanted at least warm turkey, when I'm eating it. I didn't want turkey that would have been out of the oven for an hour. That would have been cool turkey. And who wants cool turkey when you're having a hot meal, or you want to have a hot meal? So while I'm eating there, the participants in the dinner, there's a vast array of people who, let's just say, come from slightly different backgrounds. And, a lot of us are family, but we don't come from the same point of view. So I'm here eating away. And I'm hearing these guests in my house. Let's call them the deliberating ding-dongs. We'll just say that. These people just start, somehow politics comes up. I don't know how it came up. I'm just eating my turkey. I finally got to sit down after cooking for practically 2.5 days. Getting the house ready. It took a whole week. I really worked my butt off. So when I finally got to sit down, what did I hear? But politics. I was thinking, geez, I should have just turned on the camera, recorded the whole damn thing. I would have had a whole show for everybody. So the deliberating ding-dongs, there were primarily 3 people doing it, we're discussing, the first thing they were discussing was Obamacare. 2 people in the room were bashing Obama. The other person was defending Obama. And it went round and round, this whole deliberation. I'm listening to it, and it sounded like a Fox News and CNN report. It was like those stations were ruminating propaganda in my house. So you can tell the one, for sure, the one group of people who were bashing Obama, they were getting their news straight from Fox News. Definitely, it was like I could have just went to Fox News or just listened to them talk, and I had the same word for word reporting. The other person, it was like CNN. So I'm listening to everybody ruminate. And it got to the point where I was getting disgusted with the entire conversation. Because the two people that were bashing Obama are on Obamacare. And the third person is also on Obamacare. And they're all justifying Obamacare while two people are bashing Obama. And the other person just loves, by their definition, to take things from people, to use the system. And I believe maybe they like to use a lot of things. But all three of them are using the system. You got two bashing Obama, one supporting Obama. Everybody turning around, talking the propaganda from the mainstream manufactured news. And I'm telling you, I had to leave the room. I went and did some dishes because there was things to do. Anyways. But the only reason I did that, because if I knew for a fact if I spoke up, and I started chiming in a little bit, and then I knew to cut myself off, because if I would have said what I was thinking and what I wanted to say, I would have cleared the room. There would have been no more Thanksgiving. Everyone would have left the room. Everybody would have packed up, took off, ran out of the house. I would have been tarred and feathered maybe in my own house. I definitely would have been banished from any recent family and friend gatherings that might occur here in the next few weeks. So I took the high road, so to speak, and I left the room and went into the kitchen and began to do some minor cleanup work and adjusting the food and, scooping this into that and just doing some little things. I can still hear them debating propaganda. And none of them knew anything beyond what they heard from the mainstream news outlets that they listened to. I had chimed in just a little bit about how the Democrats, because the one person who listens to CNN, apparently, or maybe it's NPR or something, but they claim that the Republicans are the reason Obamacare is what it is. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, it was done behind closed doors by some Democrats. I mean, I've done the subject, I've done the subject some justice here on the John LeBang Show, and I've given you just about all the information that I've been able to find. I spent many, 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 many months. I mean, it was hours of reading the stupid law. Remember when Nancy Pelosi said this?
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
I mean, we didn't even know what was in the bill because the Democrats who owned the Senate, owned the House of Representatives, and the presidency, they didn't have to include the Republicans. In fact, not even one Republican voted yes on the Affordable Care Act. And all of a sudden then, I brought up that little tidbit, and I got the standard. Oh, there was another bill that the Republicans did. I'm like, well, yeah, the Republicans tried to do a lot of bills since then relating to Obamacare. None of them worked. None of the one that went up, the one they actually passed, the one that was going to repeal Obamacare, got to Obama and he said, veto. No, sorry. And they didn't have a supermajority to overrule his vote or his signature there, his veto. So that did it for me. I'm like, oh my God, these people don't even know what they're talking about. So I left the room. And if they're listening, please forgive me. But I didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving at my house when I did all this work. And there were still some people there that were not in the political debate that I wanted to see. But if I would have said what I wanted to say, it would have cleared the room. Because all these people are on Obamacare. All of them. The ones that are having their little debate here. The basher and the non-basher. They're all using the system. They all love Obamacare because why? None of them have to pay for anything. They let somebody else pay for their health care. It's like, well, somebody in my family did this and we needed this and they were sick. How they can't afford health care, so what are we supposed to do? And that's a tough question. But if I would have answered that question alone, that would have cleared the room. And the answer is, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get sick one day. Your health is going to diminish as you get older. As we age, things fall apart. You know this your whole life. You know it when you have kids. And what do? Not only do you not save up for that sort of thing, not only do you prepare for that, but you don't teach your kids to do it either. So then what happens? You treat your body like crap, you smoke, you do all this other stuff. You treat your body like crap all these years. You live it up. Because a lot of these people, let's be honest here, they're getting the food stamps, they're getting all this stuff from the government. Yet they're out just living it up. They don't have to work. The one guy, that kind of gives it away, but the one guy complaining, and I'm not going to point fingers directly at these people because, that always causes massive trouble in itself. But the one guy, he's 58 now, hasn't worked in 12, 13, 14, 15 years. He has a wife. Nothing. He doesn't work. He hasn't worked. He isn't going to work. What does he do? He gets some health issues. And because he hasn't worked all these years, he didn't have an insurance plan of his own. He didn't have money saved up. He just runs to the Obamacare, has somebody else pay for it. And has no conscience problems at all. Like he doesn't even care. It doesn't even bother him that somebody else is paying for him not being responsible enough to take care of things for himself and his wife. But see, if I would have said that, oh boy, that would have cleared the room. And the old CNN reporter that was at my house, if I would have said it's the same thing. I would have said the same thing. I understand that it sucks that a person gets sick, but you know your whole life that this stuff's going to happen. Prepare for it. Pay for it. Don't put it on the government and keep asking the government for more things. They've got to take it away from people. See, I don't care if there's a government health care plan that takes care of people, as long as it pays out to each individual the exact same amount that pitched in. The stupid health care plan didn't do anything to reduce costs for health care. It just found ways of taking money from this person and transferring it over here to this person. That's not making health care cheaper. That may help you out because you don't bring in a lot of money for whatever reason. If you just don't want to work for 12 or 14 or 15 years when you're an able-bodied male, even an able-bodied female, but whatever. You just wait on the government to help you out. Because you don't care. You don't care that they go ahead and take money from somebody who works hard, who earns that money. You don't care. Really irks me. So if I say these things at a holiday gathering, There's going to be all kinds of hell to pay. John will be banished from the not only family and friends. Everybody will be mad at me because the people that weren't even involved are going to be mad for me speaking up. In my own house on top of it. I mean, I had to deal with this stuff right here in my own house. And none of them, this the point is, and I got to go to a break here, but none of them knew what they were talking about. They were only speaking on the propaganda that they heard and repeating it. They were parroting it. But when I brought up provisions in the Obamacare, and when I pointed out specific things that are in the law now, I was going to say bill, but it's a law now. They were either dumbfounded, didn't know that was in there, didn't believe me, and when I told them, hey, you want me to show you? No, they don't want to read it. They don't, because it's too hard. It's easier to go to your favorite mainstream manufactured news and absorb the propaganda that they dish out to you. We've got to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. More of the John LeBang Show right after this.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Listening there. Don't go anywhere. The John LeBang Show is going to be right back. Just ask the hillbilly.
That's right. Right after this.
What about me? Maybe next time.
CRRM, CarePoint Billing Services. Their billers and managers are all dedicated to working for you to increase your profits. For more information, call CRRM at 248-579-3805. CRRM, CarePoint Billing Services.
You're listening to the John LeBang Show.
Join the radio revolution right here.
It's better than some good Thai stick, man. Yes, I would like some too.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You know, a couple other things that the deliberating ding-dongs were discussing. Global warming came up. That blew me away, but we got onto the Republican and Democrat sides of the global warming issue too. Is it happening? Isn't it happening? Yes, this and that. And none of them had facts. They were just parroting everything again. And I know I'm a little fired up on this. I had to keep it in, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't have anybody to vent to on this. I was going to blow my gasket at one point at my little gathering there, listening to this nonsense that was being regurgitated by these people. And yeah, I mean, am I afraid that one of them are going to hear this show and get all mad at me? Well, maybe they will. I don't think they listen. They probably never took the time to listen, because if they would have listened, they would have heard things like chemtrails, and they would have heard things like the Pliocene Quaternary glaciation. And if they would have been smart, they would have researched it and found out what I've been telling people all along. This so-called climate change that everybody's freaking out over is something that has happened, always will happen, and us as human beings will adapt to it. One way or another, we'll adapt to it. The weakest might not survive it. That's how nature rolls, man. It's not the rules. I didn't make the rules, Survival of the fittest. Socialists do not like survival of the fittest. And it's funny because I almost got into the true meaning of Thanksgiving at the little gathering I had. I seriously wanted to, hearing all this, because what we had was some socialists arguing the different degrees of nuance that the socialism had. Socialism is a very wide thing, and it kind of has this nuance depending on how much of an extremist you might be. And that's all I was hearing at this thing. So I almost chimed in on the global warming. I just said chemtrails. That's all I said. Nobody they stopped for a second. They probably looked up at each other like, what the hell's that? And then they continued on. It's just how it is, folks. The more I deal with people, the longer I live, I just realize that people are going to believe whatever they want. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, it does not matter what you, myself, anybody out there believes. There is a truth out there. And if you really want to know the truth, no matter what your beliefs are, you're going to continue searching for it. And you may get distracted along the way. You might get detoured in wrong directions. Because as William Cooper stated on many occasions, the truth is elusive at best. So we have that. There's also this growing phenomenon that's making the interwebs now. And that's the booms that are being heard all over the planet. These unexplainable booms. And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I've heard them myself. Now we're getting all kinds of different theories on what these are. You know, this conspiracy world, I just did a video on this. The conspiracy world can't wait for something new to jump on. They're like, oh, these booms. And you should hear some of the outlandish ideas that are coming from the conspiracy side of things. And that sucks too, because, ladies and gentlemen, there are genuine conspiracies that happen in the world. They've happened all throughout history. But when you get the conspiracy fanatics claiming that everything is a conspiracy, then it taints and it diminishes the research on the true conspiracies that do exist, that have existed throughout the course of history. So I was looking at some videos on these booms, because that's what I do. I do research. I read a bunch of articles. I try to go to the source. Nobody seems to have an answer to why these booms are happening. And that in itself gets the conspiracy crazies going. Sometimes I think they play it off. They know what these sounds are, ladies and gentlemen. Either they're building a bunker down there, or there's some kind of seismic activity, or there's something else. Maybe aliens or the lizard people are coming up. The governments who have all this advanced technology, they have a decent idea of what these booms might be. They might even be the cause of some of these booms. We wouldn't know as the general public. They're not going to disseminate that information to us. Hey, we're building this giant bunker under all these cities because we think something big is coming down. Now, you're not going to be invited in case the big event that we're expecting to happen comes. You're not invited. But hey, you know what? That's what those booms are. That's us building something. We're blowing holes in stuff. Who knows what we're doing? They're never going to come out and tell you that if they're involved with it. If the world's coming to an end, some kind of massive global seismic event is imminent, they're not going to tell us that either. They're going to say, well, everybody, let's just find a place to save the 1%, the elite of the planet. We've got the robots now, right? Yeah, we don't need a Noah's Ark for the little people anymore. We can just let them die. Okay, that's cool. And then that's what might happen there. I mean, do you really think if any of these outlandish conspiracy theories behind why these booms are, being heard across the planet, the governments are not going to just release that information for us to go, oh, it's no big deal, honey. The world's coming to an end. No biggie. It caused panic. We can still go on vacation to Florida, right? Yeah, that's cool. That stuff would cause such a panic. If anything, if they knew something was coming and it wasn't some catastrophic world event, and they localized it to a certain region, then we could get an idea by seeing like troop movements or FEMA redeployments and things like that. So if these booms are happening, which I've heard them, I mean, there was one day that was pretty damn loud. I looked around. I couldn't figure out what it was. There was a part of me that thought, okay, it's coming from above. But then as I contemplated it, it was like a little more muffled sound than high. So maybe it was below. It shook the ground. I heard the sound. I don't know what it was. Nobody does. Or at least nobody of any importance is telling us they know anything or what it might be. So the conspiracy world gets to speculate on just another thing. I mean, it's not like they don't have enough to get all crazy about. You know, I used to watch some YouTube channels for a long time. Some of the guys were my favorites, and then they just lost it, man. You just seen them go phew, way over here. Reality's not reality anymore. We're in some weird multi-bleeding over reality situation where different realities are bleeding into this reality, and things are changing like Oscar Mayer. Hot dogs are different. And, you know, things in movies that we thought they said, it didn't say, and we don't remember it that way, and who knows what. You know, you get these people, and I don't mean to be harping on the conspiracy world, because like I said earlier, there are some genuine conspiracies that the spotlight needs to be shined on. But when we're talking about all these, everything's a conspiracy. Nothing happens without some kind of a, higher power making it happen. And, I believe in a lot of that. But random booms, aliens that are lizard people under the planet, and George Bush is a lizard person, I don't know if I can believe that, man. People get into some far out things, and, if you start believing in every conspiracy, you're going to lose your grip on reality, because you need fact. If you want to find the truth, you need facts. You don't need hyperbole. You don't need speculation. And you don't go to some website like Snopes to get the answers. You go to the source. And if the source isn't available, you read as much as you can from as many different people about the subject. And then you kind of try to figure out things from there, and you gather that information. This conspiracy world, everything's at best circumstantial, and at very least complete fantasy and lunacy. I mean, they belong with the deliberating ding-dongs. They're the third side of the ding-dong right there. Just amazing, folks. What we got coming up, ladies and gentlemen, is we did an interview with our good friend Derek Shelmerdine. He wrote the book Rock and Roll Unraveled. We did an extremely long pre-recorded interview this past week, and we're going to play some of it here in the first hour, and then we're going to do the rest of it in the second hour, because it's really long. I mean, it's one of the longest interviews we've ever done here on the John LeBang Show, and it's more than an interview, ladies and gentlemen. He's become a contributor to the show. He really puts in a lot of time piecing together all this information from his book so that we can have a nice little chatty-do, as Monograph from YouTube would say, on the subject of rock and roll history. So that's going to be coming up when we come back from the break. We're probably going to do a half hour, then the first hour, and then we're going to do the second half hour or whatever's left. It's pretty close to an hour long, the entire talk between Derek and I. We'll probably put that somewhere in the second hour. All right, folks, time to take that half hour break.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Listening there. Don't go anywhere. The John LeBang Show is going to be right back. Just ask the hillbilly.
That's right. Right after this.
What about me? Maybe next time.
Fans, do you need a video for your brand new song but don't have a lot of money? Then contact John LeBang. His reasonable rates, professional look, and fast turnarounds will help get that song off the ground. Contact him at jlebang.com.
Hey, man, it's at the bottom of the hour, man. Do you know where your kids are, man?
Forces of darkness, the treasonable maggots who collaborate must, can, will be wiped from the face of the earth.
As promised, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear part one of our monthly segment, Rock and Roll Unraveled, with author Derek Shelmerdine.
I think of myself more as a song and dance man, you know.
The only reason that we are still together is that the subtlety of delicate change in the music.
Some of it's old, some of it's new, something borrowed, something brown.
It's the sea of a band that wears makeup. And you've got snakes, and you've got guillotines, and you've got really hard rock, Detroit rock and roll.
All those groups and people that started off when we were starting off, they're all still going.
It's funny how many times rock and roll has been dead. Yeah, how many times people have said it's been dead, it just keeps coming back like a bloody phoenix.
Rock and roll!
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we do each and every month, we have author of Rock and Roll Unraveled, Mr. Derek Shelmerdine, joining us for another Rock and Roll Unraveled segment. How you doing, Derek?
I'm doing well, John, and you?
I'm doing, you can't complain, Derek. We're coming up on Thanksgiving. That's my probably favorite holiday of the year, and that means we get to eat like pigs, and I'm hoping to gain like 4 or 5 pounds here tomorrow.
Perfect.
So we've got a whole lot of rock and roll stuff going on between now and the end of the year with rock and roll history. I'm with all that you've been doing with the show, you're more than a guest, really. You're a contributor to the show, and I wanted to thank you for being such a big part of the broadcast, being that it's Thanksgiving and all. I really want to give thanks to you for being, more than just a guest on this show. You really have become part of the show, and I just wanted to thank you publicly for that.
Oh, thanks a lot, John. That's really great. I mean, I really enjoy chatting to you every month. I mean, it really is great fun. As you say, I mean, wow, there's a whole load of rock and roll stuff that went on sort of in the festive season and the run up to the festive season. I thought we might start with the Beach Boys. You got a couple of December birthdays. Dennis was born on the 4th, and Carl was almost a Christmas baby, born on the 21st. Sadly, though, Dennis did die on the 28th of December 1983. He was just 39 years old. He was swimming off his boat at Marina del Rey in Los Angeles, and he drowned, rather sadly.
Did he just go for a swim or by himself?
Yeah, I think he was doing some sort of underwater swimming, and I've never really been able to find out exactly what happened, but he got himself into difficulties. But the interesting thing is that he got special dispensation. Well, he didn't, obviously, but somebody, the family, got special dispensation from the White House for his body to be buried at sea.
That's interesting. And
yeah.
who do you know what year that was?
Well, that was 1983, so it would have been 1984 when he was actually buried. He died on the 28th of December, 1983.
Okay. And so that was Reagan. Reagan allowed, as president, he sent that through? Is that what?
It must have been, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It must have been. Apparently, the special dispensations needed for that. Also, other sad, strange thing, on the 23rd of December 1964, Brian Wilson had a nervous breakdown. He was on a flight to Houston at the time, and that marked the end of Brian Wilson's live appearances. After that, he just concentrated on the sort of creative side, writing, producing, and he was replaced by Glenn Campbell for a short time. But then it was in January 65, and 3 or 4 months later, in April, he moved on to pick up his solo career, and that's when Bruce Johnston came in, initially just in the recording studio, but they obviously all got on well, and he progressively took over, became part of the live act as well. But when you think that their first Capitol single, their first single basically, Surfing Safari, was mid-62. I mean, that's only 2.5 years before Brian ceased to be part of the acting group. I mean, you always think very much of Brian Wilson as the heart of the Wilson brothers and the Beach Boys, but he wasn't on stage with them for all that long.
Yeah, and so he just had a nervous breakdown, couldn't do it anymore, and he just gave the whole thing up.
That's right. Well, he gave the live side up, but he carried on then very much as the powerhouse in the back room. He did loads of production. He wrote an awful lot of the material that they had. And it wasn't really until the Pet Sounds and the long lost Smile album, he was still very much the powerhouse up until Smile, the famous follow-up, or near follow-up to Pet Sounds. But the rest of it, Brian Wilson was then very much taking the band into breaking a lot of new ground with Smile, and the rest of the band didn't like it. They thought it really wasn't commercial enough for them, and that really marked the end of Brian Wilson's domination of the sort of creative side of the Beach Boys.
Yeah, that's interesting. In some ways, the Beach Boys have a similar background to AC/DC, where it was kind of built through the family, right? And then they went on, and even though somebody wasn't part of the group, that would have been George Young, he kept coming back to help them make their sound better. So, yeah, that's an interesting story there.
Yeah, and the Beach Boys are on tour, and they quite extensively from the at the moment through to the middle of next year. The 8th of June is the latest one they've got in the diary, and Brian Wilson as well is on tour next year. He's got a couple of dates announced already. I think it's Nashville for the 10th to the 12th of May, but he's adding a lot more dates, so good time to look out to see Brian Wilson on the road again.
So he's over his whole mental thing there, it looks like, if he can go on tour, his breakdown.
I think so, because he's actually been on the road. I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly when he did his first tour again, but he's been on the road now for a little while, so obviously he's getting back into it. I think the difference being that, I mean, he was Mr. Beach Boy. I mean, he was the guy that was doing just about everything back in the early 60s, middle 60s. So you can imagine that, you can imagine him cracking under the strain of that kind of workload. But now it would be a lot more relaxed. I mean, he's not looking to pump out hit single after hit single.
Right.
So I should imagine he's just sort of enjoying it, really.
Yep, and wouldn't we all?
Absolutely.
So we got Beatles too, new.
Yeah, I mean, the Beatles had some interesting times in December. I mean, you can't really let December go without mentioning the sad demise of John Lennon, who was murdered on the 8th of December 1980, which is getting on for 40 years ago, which is pretty astounding. I mean, that morning, Annie Leibovitz had been photographing their apartment, the interiors, and about 4:30 in the afternoon, they left to go to the Hit Factory, where they were working on Yoko's next single, Walking on Thin Ice. They arrived back about 10:30 in the evening, got cornered by Mark Chapman, and he shot him dead.
Yeah, and then everything else is history, huh?
Absolutely. But what's really sad about it is John Lennon had only really just come back out of a self-imposed exile. I mean, he just released the Double Fantasy album in the middle of November, and the album before that was his rock and roll album. That was the early part of 1975. He'd really taken on board the whole concept of being a house husband, and he'd only just got back into the sort of creative side of music, and it was all just cut immediately short. So it's a sad story all around, that one, I think.
Yeah, and that was one of the more tragic deaths in all of rock and roll, I would think.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he was gone before his time, unlike some of the people where they might have committed their own suicide or just time wore on them. He was cut short, and you could say very close to his prime of his career.
Oh, absolutely, very much. As you say, I mean, very, very few other rock and roll stars have actually been murdered. I mean, an awful lot have died in car crashes and plane crashes, and a lot have committed suicide. But it's very rare for that to have happened. But
yeah, if they get past 27, they're okay, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they were really quite concerned. Was one of the reasons they stopped touring when they did that last tour of America. The whole more popular than Jesus thing had just broken in America, and they had radio stations burning their albums, and there was I remember seeing pictures of a Ku Klux Klan demonstration outside of one of their gigs, and they really were concerned that somebody would shoot them while they were on stage, and a whole load of things came together, and they just stopped touring and became a studio band,
and with good reason too. So,
oh, absolutely. Well, I think that was the time as well that music was getting a lot more sophisticated, and the ability to reproduce the albums on stage was getting a lot harder. So I think there were a lot of factors going on. But interestingly, around that sort of time, they had probably their only real failure. Magical Mystery Tour was a Christmas TV show. And it was really the height of their fame, 67. This is the Christmas after the Sgt. Pepper album. And on what we call in the UK Boxing Day, the 26th of December, their Magical Mystery Tour TV show, about an hour long, premiered on, there were only 3 channels at the time, believe it or not, BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. And it's premiered at absolute peak time on the 26th of December on BBC One, which was still only able to show black and white programs at that time. So it aired in black and white, and it wasn't for another week it went on to BBC Two that actually had colour capabilities. But it was panned by the critics.
And BBC One, BBC Two, that was like the 2 national broadcasting stations at the time?
That's right. And there was only one other one, the commercial ITV program. But McCartney was very much the mind behind the Magical Mystery Tour concept. He took the idea from Ken Casey, who went across the States in, I think it was 65, in a bus called Further. And Paul McCartney liked that idea, and he very much used that as the idea behind the Magical Mystery Tour. And that was the time as well that the Beatles were still releasing different things in America and the UK. And in the UK, it came out on a very nice double EP with just 6 tracks. But in America, it was put out on an album, which had those 6 tracks plus a couple of singles on the other side.
All right, we got to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. On the flip side of this, more of part 1 of our interview with author Derek Shelmerdine, Rock and Roll Unraveled, headed your way.
Where do you think you're going?
The John LeBang Show will be right back.
So grab a beer and a smoke and sit your butt back down. Stay right here.
Powerful, epic music by Toot Box Roll. Life-changing lyrics come in every style, empowering humanity to finally unlock the chains of bondage. Experience the edgy side of positive music and rock your world today. From Primal to Divine, available now at sassyalternativemusic.com.
If you want to contact the John LeBang Show, feel free to send an email to jlebang@live.com. And if you're on Twitter, look him up at John LeBang. And don't forget to go to his Facebook page at The John LeBang Show. Now here's John.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we continue on with part 1 of our Rock and Roll Unraveled segment this month with author Derek Shelmerdine.
Christmas is also the time that the Beatles conquered America. 26th of December 1963, Capitol had finally decided that there might be some mileage in releasing records by the Beatles. Capitol Records is the American arm of, or parent company of EMI's Parlophone. And Capitol didn't want to pick the Beatles up. They didn't think there was any mileage in their music. But on the 26th of December, I Want to Hold Your Hand became number one it became number one in February. It was released on the 26th of December, 63. And there was publicity then. I mean, this is after Ed Sullivan had seen them at Heathrow Airport and seen the Beatlemania. But they'd had a couple of 3 singles out already, a couple on VJ and one on Swan. But it was their appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show on February the 9th, 64, that really started the whole ball rolling. And then, the Beatles just became absolutely massive in America.
Yeah, they were great. Now, the I Want to Hold Your Hand single that you're talking about, I saw her standing there on the B-side.
That's right.
When I was a child, I actually was a collector of records, and I actually had, I don't know if it was a remake or whatever, but I had the single of I Want to Hold Your Hand, the 45, with that actual B-side on it. So being a child, I don't know how valuable that one was as we relate to it all now. But that when you brought up I Want to Hold Your Hand, I thought, man, I had that actual record of 45 of that sucker right in my hand at one time.
Yeah, it's brilliant to think back on the singles and the albums, as you say, that you bought at the time. It always tends to bring memories of that time back.
You're just breaking into this new world of music.
Yeah,
you never heard it before, and all of a sudden you're like, man, where was this all my life? And you're only like 5 or 6 or 7, but still.
Absolutely. But what was great about those sort of times as well, that's the early 60s, is all that the music was coming out. As the music was coming out, you'd never, ever heard it before. That was beat music very much, Mersey beat music. And around the mid-60s, 65, 66, it matured, not really matured, it went on to the next level of rock music, because that was very much born around 65, 66 with people like Cream, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors. And what was fabulous about that time was you were hearing it all for the first time. You'd never heard anything like it before. And it was just so exciting. I mean, when people like Pink Floyd started putting stuff out on their early albums, wow, this is weird.
It was very strange music that, unless you were very open in your music taste, you would have turned it off right away. You would have been like, what is this stuff?
Absolutely. Well, I remember with the Pink Floyd's first album, that we didn't really have a local record store, so I cycled, which for me was a lot, 7 miles there, which meant 7 miles back, to listen to the Pink Floyd's first album, because I really liked the single. I thought, this is going to be good. And in those days, you didn't have headphones. You had a little booth, and you stuck your head in a booth, and the guy put the record on the deck behind the counter, and it transferred to the booth. And I listened to the first side, and I thought, wow, this is weird. So I thought, well, I've cycled this far, I'll listen to the other side. So I listened to the second side, and I thought, it's even weirder. But I thought, well, I've gotten this far, I'll buy it. And it was a good decision. I've been a big Pink Floyd fan ever since.
Yeah, one of the most creative bands of all time, for sure.
Oh, I love them. Managed to see them a couple of times.
Yeah, I saw Roger Waters this past summer, but I've never seen the full Pink Floyd act.
Yeah, well, sadly, several of those are dead now, so there won't be any of the original. And I don't think Roger Waters and David Gilmour get on too well either. So the chance of them performing together again, I think, is pretty remote.
Yeah, they have a continuing spat going on.
Oh, absolutely.
So continue on, Derek. I know I diverted us way off topic there.
Oh, no, there's just so many great places to go. But yeah, staying with the mid-60s, I mean, the Rolling Stones have got a couple of great Christmas stories. On the 26th of December 1964, so they were really just starting out. They'd had a couple of good hits in the UK. They put this advert in NME, New Musical Express magazine, which is one of the big was one of the big music magazines of the time. And that was the time when the Beatles, the Stones, the Pretty Things and the like, they were all really starting to grow their hair long. And they put an ad in the NME wishing starving hairdressers and their families a happy Christmas. I thought that was a great thing to do. But on the 11th of December 1968, they were actually recording Rock and Roll Circus, which was intended as a Christmas special. And I mean, it's widely available now, but it was never shown at the time. It featured people like Taj Mahal, The Who, and Dirty Mac. Dirty Mac was John Lennon's band, and he called himself, on the show itself, he calls himself Winston Leg Thigh. And the Dirty Mac, great name. And the band comprised Eric Clapton, Keith Richards on bass, and Jimi Hendrix's drummer Mitch Mitchell. I mean, Yoko joined them after a couple of songs, but that was John Lennon's actual first appearance outside of the Beatles.
And they never recorded together, right? They just did these gigs together. They never had a chance to record, right?
No, well, this show is available. So in that sense, that one show is recorded and can be seen. But what happened was that Mick Jagger, well, urban legend has it that Mick Jagger thought that the Stones had been totally outperformed by The Who. The Who did a storming version of a quick one while he's away, and he pulled it, and it wasn't shown. It was intended to show that Christmas, but didn't. But it did make its way onto a DVD release in 1996.
So he was that angry that the Who outdid the Stones, and he didn't want the whole world to see it, huh?
It would seem so, yeah. I mean, when you watch it now, I mean, the Who do a storming performance. I mean, there's no two ways about that. But the Rolling Stones stuff was really good. But sadly, that was Brian Jones's last live performance with the Stones, because he died the following year. Mm. And there was another interesting thing about it as well. Jethro Tull had just lost their first guitarist. I think it was Mick Abrams. He'd gone off to form Blood with Pig, I think. And Black Sabbath, well, they were called Earth at the time, but Earth became Black Sabbath. Their guitarist, Tony Iommi, stood in. He joined Tull, but he was only with them very, very briefly, but long enough to be included in the Tull lineup for that particular Christmas special.
Now, were there any songs that he recorded with Tull? Is he part of Aqualung or something like that? Because I swear Aqualung sounds like a Tony Iommi riff. Down, 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 down.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that, but I know he was only with them a very short time, so he wouldn't have been with them long enough to record a whole album. As far as I know, that's the only recording with him, but there might be odd other recordings as well, but he was only with them a very short time, and he went back to Earth, and shortly afterwards Earth became Black Sabbath.
And who we were doing and you joined in, I had this make a banger all-star band, and I swear almost every Black Sabbath member won on the votes.
Right. Oh, excellent.
The only one who did it was Keith Moon. So we got Black Sabbath up front with Keith Moon on drums. And there's your all-star band.
Now that would be well worth hearing.
Definitely.
I mean, sadly, of course, there are no Beatles tour. Well, the Beatles tours, Ringo and Paul, have just ended their tours. They finished in November rather, and the Stones aren't on tour at the moment. But they do tour fairly regularly. But one of the guys that is on tour at the moment, Bob Dylan. On the 27th of December 1967, he released his album John Wesley Harding. Now, nothing remarkable in that in itself, apart from the fact it's a brilliant album, except that he'd been in a sort of self-imposed exile for about 18 months before that. In mid-66, he was on his infamous Electric tour, and it is a legendary official bootleg album that's called the original album was the Royal Albert Hall. It was a famous Dylan bootleg, recorded on the 17th of May, 1966. And that's the one, the concert, it's in London. Well, the Royal Albert Hall's in London. But that's the one where, towards the end of the gig, he's getting a lot of stick from the audience. And someone in the audience shouts out, "Judas!" And there's a pause, and Dylan shouts back, "You're a liar!"
And that's because he was playing electric and it was going against his acoustic roots, right?
Yeah, but he'd already recorded quite a lot of electric stuff before then. And I think most of the, I mean, it was only a few, really, I think it was only a few die-hard acoustic folk fans that were really against it. But it just sort of carried on for that year. He was at the Newport Festival, of course, when he had the famous gig there with Paul Butterfield's blues band, more or less. But what's great on this, the album is now legally available from CBS in Bob Dylan's bootleg series. And after he shouts back, "I don't believe you," he turns to the band, and you can actually hear him say, "Play very loud," although he didn't use the word very to instruct the band. But what's great about that little story is that the album has always been referred to as the Royal Albert Hall bootleg album, but it was actually recorded at Manchester at the Free Trade Hall a week later. The bootleggers actually got the venue wrong when they put the album out.
Oh, really?
So what's always been known as the Royal Albert Hall gig is actually the Free Trade Hall gig.
Surprised somebody didn't sue somebody over that one.
Absolutely. Well, it was a bootleg. You can't expect it all.
Right.
He was backed by the Hawks, Ronnie Hawkins' original band, who became Bob Dylan's backing band. They were still called the Hawks at that stage, 66. But then that was sort of May 66. In July 66, that's what, on the 29th of July, that's when he had his famous motorcycle accident near his home in Woodstock. And the details of that are very hazy. I mean, Dylan himself is known to just like to tell various stories, and he's said given various accounts of the accident itself. So nobody really knows how seriously he was injured.
I drive my motorcycle, I get hot, and then I fell from the crash, boom.
Exactly. I couldn't put it better myself, mate.
Go ahead.
If you think that crash is on the 29th of July 66 and the album didn't come out, John Wesley Harding, till December 67, I mean, that's a really good 18 months that after Blonde on Blonde, he just took stock. He did record the Basement tapes, which have been released in bits and pieces over the years. They were recorded in sort of June to October of 67. So he was obviously getting back into it.
And he just finished his tour, didn't he?
No, he's just finished the American leg of his tour.
Okay.
But he's in Italy. He's got some Italian dates in the diary and advertised from the 3rd to the 9th of April. And I dare say he'll add some more dates around that. I can't imagine him going to Italy without doing some more of Europe and probably kicking off or ending up or both in the States. So he's definitely still up for being on the road. And if you happen to be in Italy in the springtime, there's an opportunity to catch him there. And all of the information is on the website in terms of where these dates are, what the venues are, details of the dates themselves.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for yet another hour of The John LeBang Show. I'd like to thank our affiliate stations all across the world for allowing The John LeBang Show to be part of their networks. Please go to our website. That's www.jlebang.com. I'd also like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Second hour coming your way on some of the stations. Otherwise, check your local listings. And for now, this is John LeBang signing off from the Banger Studios. See you next time.
4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Tune in again next week. Same time, same space, same station.
Resistance is futile.